Hi guys, thanks for tuning in to another episode of Nuggets News. Or this might be a member-only video with Kyle. Thanks for joining me, Kyle.
How you doing? Good to see you
Pre-
again, mate.
yeah, you too. Thanks for jumping on. We haven't done something like this in a while. I guess just so all our members know that we've been chatting heaps most days about everything that's going on in the market, and Kyle's been contributing with his videos. I still haven't been doing as much content as I want to, or the place I want to get to. I'm still just working on my own physical and mental health to get back to 100%, but hopefully soon I want to ramp that side of things up as well. But geez, it's an interesting time to be alive, mate, isn't it? Plenty going on.
Oh my God, so much going on. I mean, like we were just talking about central bank digital currencies and potentially gold backing the dollar and all this sort of stuff. It's like, wow, what is happening right now?
Absolutely. So we're going to go through those questions, the comments that you guys had, then we'll have a look at the TA related stuff that Kyle brings up his charts. But just quickly, as you just mentioned, then there was a bill out today saying should we create a state issued gold backed US dollar, and then there's all the talk at the moment around these central bank digital currencies and Fed now. Let's probably dive into that. That was one of the member questions, but I think it all comes back to this broader picture of that even some members are talking about. Is this a deliberate crash, an attack on crypto, or Operation Choke Point to try and cut us off from the banking system before they can launch their own? And I do think ultimately that's kind of the direction they want to take it in, and you can put on your tinfoil hat whether that's a complete control thing and comes into digital ID and then food stamps, and then you can't catch the bus if you put something up on Facebook or Twitter they don't like, which we saw happen in Canada with the truckers and stuff. So I do think that is all possible, but that's again why we're fighting for crypto and these sort of decentralized or private encrypted alternatives. But what are your thoughts on that stuff, just off the top of your head?
Yeah, I had a few conversations with some friends that are pretty big on this, and they're like, sort of panicking about it happening. In my opinion, it won't, if they do something totalitarian, you know what I mean, tyrannical with it, right? It
Yeah.
probably won't happen that soon. So they might do central bank digital currency, right? And yeah, there is potential for it to be used in negative ways, but I don't think we will see it be used in negative ways for like 20, 30 years if it does happen, right? So like the structure gets put in place, then you have bad actors come in and then they abuse it. And I think the time between the two is going to be a lot longer than what people think. I don't think it's going to be like, here's central bank digital currency, here's tyranny, like a year later type thing. But
Yeah.
who knows?
I don't know. I mean,
COVID, I don't believe anything.
if you had said to me about the truckers and the people supporting those protests, would they have their bank accounts frozen a week later? You probably would have said no.
Exactly.
And even if it is 20 years, it's not a world we want kids to grow up in either. And I just don't. Once they roll these things out, it doesn't get rolled back. We've seen cash get harder and harder, and then ANZ. I don't know if you saw that article floating around. First of the big four banks to ban cash withdrawals from branches.
Yeah.
And then I think there's exceptions, like if you fill out a form and give them plenty of notice and you're a business, you can come in, but you've got to do all that in advance. But, this is just this one step at a time for things that I remember talking about 10, 15 years ago that this was all coming. So it's pretty wild, and that's why I guess you have to stand up for what you believe in or move to a place that has a better government. And it's good to see a lot of these countries already pushing back on all this kind of stuff that we're seeing, fake meat alternatives, and they want to ban meat and all this kind of stuff. So there's going to be places in the world that go, no, this is BS what you're saying about X, Y, Z, and people are hopefully free to relocate. But it is sad when these countries that are meant to be, greatest on earth and free, Australia or America, whatever, are just turning to this path where it's just all run by corporations and whatever.
And they're trying to make you eat bugs.
Yeah.
Stop eating steak. Instead, eat ground up crickets that aren't nutritionally, because the protein's as high, but then you can't really absorb the protein. So, okay, nice. Science.
Yeah. Yeah. Everyone should be free to eat what they want, I think. But anything else on Operation Choke Point? I do think that this happened in Australia. Like I think it was before the 2017 run when I was first going to do crypto. It was really, really hard. All the banks in Australia stamped out partnering with any exchanges, and a lot of those OTC brokers were used to do local bitcoins and stuff. They were just had to try 100 different times, 100 different accounts and whatever. So it's not the first time that this has kind of happened. And there's always one bank that sees an opportunity for profit, or a country. And I think that's probably a big, broader theme for the next macro cycle in crypto. That even if US really ban everything, were to shut all the doors and say no one's allowed to bank and blah, 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 like, people keep forgetting that there's a billion people in India, in China,
Yeah.
Indonesia, these other countries, and
Africa.
America's just 300 million people that feel like they have all
Mm.
this control and they're well policed, but really in the big picture in 10 years it's kind of irrelevant what they do with these other countries. We've been talking about Bali, and we might share some of that stuff later on, but just these countries that are going gang-ho on crypto and blockchain is the next big thing. It's kind of irrelevant what the
Right.
US do if they want to send all that innovation and capital and smart minds elsewhere.
Well, the thing is, the US have a stable currency because of their reserve currency. So they don't know the pain of having your money just deflate. Well, they do, but it's a very small percent over a long time. Whereas other people, they wake up one day and they've got 70% less purchasing power than what they had yesterday. It's pretty painful. So
Yeah.
that's why you're seeing in like a lot of smaller third world nations, I shouldn't say developing nations, sorry, especially in Africa. I think Africa has one of the highest usages for Bitcoin as a payments platform
Yeah.
in the entire world. So it's like, you can see the core groundings of people wanting that freedom of currency that isn't easily inflated away, losing purchasing power. Even though it is volatile, it's still, in my opinion, serving its purpose every single time there is some sort of a currency collapse. Like Turkey, for example, every single time there's a country anywhere on the planet that has a currency crisis, Bitcoin purchasing spikes through the roof. So that's a very strong use case, in my opinion.
Yeah. I mean, you can argue the Aussie dollar lost 30% of its value in a recent cycle or whatever. And, so is Bitcoin losing 70% in a cycle? Because each cycle it's going to mature and those returns are going to be less. But the one other thing we haven't mentioned yet was there's been a lot of news lately about, Saudis and China are doing these deals and dropping the dollar. And
That's
again,
concerning.
that's something else that's kind of been around for 10 years. I remember when I went right down that silver and gold rabbit hole, and everyone was saying silver's going to $600 next month and stuff, and there's all these articles about the US dollar dying. So I still think that that's going to be a death by 1,000 cuts and a slow process, because it's just so entrenched in the trillions in the bonds, and the people just don't
Yeah.
realize how deep it is in the banking system. But I think there has actually been a fresh round of news and sentiment and people going, we're sick of the dollar and the hegemony. So I think it's slowly happening. But again, I don't want people to think that, the dollar's going to zero and next year and blah, blah, blah. I just don't see that happening either.
It'll take a long time, in my opinion, because there's so much debt in dollars. So people owe debt in dollars and there's not enough. And also, people have to remember that it wasn't the US that said everybody has to use dollars, right? The euro dollar thing actually happened. I was reading up about this the other day. Santiago always talks about this, right?
Yeah.
On Twitter. And he was saying that, it started because Russia was using US dollars to pay for things, before the fall of the Berlin Wall and all this sort of stuff, because they had too much currency fluctuation, right? And then from there, sort of like all of Europe started using dollars for their international transactions and stuff like that. Like, it wasn't the US that forced everybody to use the dollars. Everybody else just chose to use dollars.
Yeah.
And so there's a reason why everybody uses dollars. There's so many reasons why people use dollars for their international transactions and trade balances and stuff like that. And one of the main ones is like, okay, if you're Brazil and you're going to start trading with China and you're going to start using the yuan, right? You have to trust that China aren't going to do something to their currency overnight that makes all the billions of dollars of yuan that you're holding change value without you knowing. Right. And I don't believe that trust level is there for a lot of these countries that we're talking about in the BRICS community.
Yeah.
And we look at how bad the euro has done, over the European Union, I should say. Everyone always laughs at how much of a joke the ECB is, right? And it's going to collapse and all this sort of stuff. And those are like pretty well-respected European countries that have very similar values, and they can't even make it work properly, right? Now try and add India and China and Brazil and Russia and Saudi Arabia in the mix, all completely different cultures, completely different values, a little bit dodgy, all of them as well, with, their reporting, financial statistics and everything like that.
Yeah.
Like, how the hell are these countries going to form a union and work together seamlessly to build the trust of the world to then take over the dollar? I just can't see it happening.
Yeah, I think that global basket currency where you remove that word trust, as you say, so we're going to end up with something that's a basket or commodity based, so there's no cheating the system, and these countries that have resources are going to take power away from countries like the US that have sort of been exploiting that. But then I think that takes us to this bigger picture question about, like, well, is Bitcoin ultimately an energy backed currency because you need energy to mine it, and you can't create it without energy. So I think, yeah, and whether it's 20 years or 30 years, whatever, I think we go to this place where value and exchange is done far more on things that are tangible and real, whether that's commodities or energy or whatever. And it's no longer just, the US get to print money out of thin air, and we'll have this oil and we'll have this rare earth metal from you, and you owe us money now because we got to print it, sort of thing. I just think that's a thing of the past.
Yeah, for sure. It's going to be very interesting to see, how it develops over the next 20, 30 years, that's for sure. And I just pray that it doesn't end up leading to, West versus BRICS in a world war. So a lot of people think that's the direction that we're heading in. Hopefully, we can get strong leaders that avoid that, and there's, some sort of peaceful transition, I should say, into, a newer world.
Yeah. All right, well, let's dive into a few of these questions that people had. I might share my screen just so you can see what I'm looking at as well. But this is a couple of altcoins that people are asking about. So the first one was Manifold, who haven't got the friendliest website, to be honest. I did have a look around, but this is one of the newer LSD, so the liquid staking derivatives. I still think that's going to be a big thing. Manifold looked interesting in that they were trying to get rid of a lot of that sandwiching attacks and that kind of thing on different dexes. So trying to protect that mine extractable value. I think with a lot of these ones, it becomes, if you're going to hold this, or do you need to hold this to get that benefit, and how does that accrue to token holders? And building an ecosystem around that is a lot harder for these smaller, newer ones compared to Rocket Pool and Lido and these other ones that are probably the safer plays. But yeah, certainly interesting. And the other one that was similar that someone asked about was Acid. So 0x Acids. This one was a lot smaller as well. I think market cap was only around $1 million or 4 million, something pretty tiny. And I had a look through these docs, and the one thing I didn't like was how they're saying, we're pretty sure ETH's going to go to $10,000 and then all asset holders are going to get a big payout and that kind of thing. That's not something that you'd say strong fundamental case to, should be basing things on where price is going. And what if price goes the opposite way? Does that mean you're, admitting that it's going to be capitulation on all fronts? But yeah, I think it's good to see these little ones try new things and experimenting. But definitely at the moment, I think with the unlock that's coming, I don't think we're going to see a heap of selling like people are worried about. I think once people can unstake their ETH and sell whatever, it's going to be a slow process. It's not going to happen all at once. And it's going to probably lead to more people saying, okay, well, I'm comfortable to actually start staking now that I know I can take it out. So I don't know if you've got any thoughts on liquid staking ones or anything like that.
Mate, I'm with the second part of your comment that, now that people can actually get their value out, right? So if you put capital into something, but you don't know that you can get it out, like obviously you're going to be a little bit more hesitant, right?
Yeah.
But now that they're opening up so you can actually withdraw, possibly it's going to be bullish and more. There might be a whole heap of money flow into Ethereum. So possibly it's a sell the news event anyway, and we get a 10% sell off anyway, right? Can't rule that out at all. But I think potentially longer term, it's actually going to be more bullish because people are like, okay, I can now deposit in, stake it, and I can withdraw whenever I want. Whereas previously it was like, when am I going to be able to get my value back out? Which is obviously a risk that some people have to avoid.
Yeah.
So you remove that risk, potentially it's actually going to create more inflows. So
yeah, that's definitely the way that I'm looking at that as well. Metis. All right. So this is a layer 2 scaling solution. Been around for a while now, but something I didn't realize that they're doing that's pretty new is trying to combine optimistic rollups and zero knowledge proofs to get the best of both worlds. So yeah, this was a project that I'm glad someone put back, and we might do a deep dive in one of our future research pieces on, because yeah, it did look very interesting. Got a good ecosystem. As you say there, gaming, DeFi, socials, all the stuff that we all love, and already integrated well with a lot of well-known projects. So yeah, thanks to whoever did post that one. Next one was Zrun. So this is probably one of my favorite projects. Not necessarily favorite investments, but I just think that the future of digital horse racing, I know all the guys at cricket on their phones doing horse bets. My dad and his friends. So horse racing itself, the old school version, is huge, and just betting in general. So the fact that you can have digital horses, they can run 24/7. You can move them and race them against anyone all over the world. So I did a huge write up on Zed Run if you haven't read that already. But these guys, I'm pretty sure, already partner with was it Budweiser and Netflix and this kind of thing, and still only like 10 million market cap. So I really like Zed Run. The only question is, do you go down the NFT investment path if you're going to go in and buy a horse and train your horse and try and get it better that way, or lease it out? Versus they do have a token. Again, like I said, I think it's about 10 mil. So if they can make some changes, there's such a huge ecosystem where they can start to funnel value back into that token, which I think is a pretty good play. Have you checked this one out at all?
I remember you talked to me about it a while ago and I had a quick look at it. But yeah, I mean, I'm not a big gambling person. I think I do enough of that type of activity on,
Yes.
on trading, but I have a lot of friends that are really big into sports gambling. And I just think anything that's sports gambling related will eventually do well. And, you know, if this is completely legal, I'm sure it is in some countries, and they're not doing anything dodgy behind the scenes to rig the races, that would be my biggest question. But I don't see why they wouldn't want to make money, because people will gamble on anything. It's insane.
Yeah,
So
yeah. There's something crazy. So I can't remember, but it was just hundreds of races or thousands of races a week. I couldn't believe how active their community was when I did the research on it, and that was a while back. So the other one that I still love, and I think probably this one and the next one I'm going to mention, and even Zed Run. You know, when you look at these things that are around 10 mil or sub 10 mil market cap that have a really good product, and it's just whether or not it can catch on. Like, these are things that can go up 100x in the next cycle. So I remain really bullish on Handle Finance, an Aussie team that I know. This is the theme, and I've done right up on this as well, is basically that CZ and others have come out and said, with all the US dollar and stablecoin crackdowns that we already spoke about, we're going to look to have, you know, euro based stablecoins, Aussie dollar, you know, every currency. And this is what they do. They have different currency stablecoins backed by ETH. You know, you can trade on the platform itself, do forex trading, or just swap between currencies. So decentralized FX markets, I just think it's a huge opportunity. And when it's sitting there, I still think it's sub 10 mil market caps. This is one that I've done plenty of research on and posts on, and added to my portfolio. I mentioned in the group as well a while back. Any thoughts on that one at all? Or?
well, yeah, I mean, this is one you've talked to me about a couple of times also. It looks pretty nice. You know, I don't see why it wouldn't eventually build traction over the market cycle for sure. It's pretty new though, isn't it? Like I can't remember looking at the chart.
It's been around for probably 4 years, to be honest. Maybe more, maybe five. But yeah, it's only on like Uniswap and SushiSwap, so it's not widely listed on any exchanges. They've been really underground building out their tech, and I think even now they haven't really gone that hard on marketing or anything. So, but that's how you find these gems. You know, you're not going to find one
Yeah.
that's already spent a heap on marketing and already on all the exchanges that can do 100x.
What's the ticker again? Is it 4x?
4x is the ticker, yeah. And the other one that I did a write up on, or maybe a couple of write ups on now, is just Bitcoin DeFi. And we've seen some of these ordinals and stamps that have taken off this week. And so, you know, NFTs on Bitcoin and DeFi on Bitcoin, it's never going to be as flexible or as good as Ethereum and these others, but it is going to come in some way, shape, or form. And that's going to get people excited. So, Sovereign do Bitcoin-backed loans, and they've now got the Sovereign Dollar, so a Bitcoin-backed stablecoin. You know, it's a good app. It's easy to use. You can connect your ledger. So yeah, again, when I see something like this that's got heaps of cool stuff going on, technology that you can already do it, and it's just the fact that people don't really know about this yet or understand it, and it's sub 10 mil market cap. Yeah, I just think Bitcoin scaling and Bitcoin DeFi and all this stuff is going to be a new sort of theme at one stage or another. We always have a part of the bull run. I'll go back to just you and I here. We always have some part of the bull run where Bitcoin gets a reason why everyone's just bullish on that again, and that narratives take off, and then Bitcoin has its run, and we rotate into ETH and alts and whatnot. So
Yeah, for sure. And so basically, just to explain to you guys that don't understand how that works, You want to be watching the Bitcoin dominance chart for that, and then also the total and total two charts, which can help you
Do you want
pick
to bring those
when
up
the
now, mate?
rotation.
Well, I've pretty much finished all those
Yeah,
fundamental
too
questions. If you
easy.
want to share your screen, we'll dive into some of this stuff to tie it back in with the charts.
Okay, that should be sharing screen.
Yep.
Okay, so this is the total. So it's basically all cryptocurrency, right? And I've done a couple of videos on this recently, but what we're looking at here is very similar to what you would call a Wyckoff accumulation schematic, right? So this is what you call the preliminary support area, where there's the first amount of buying before the final selling climax. Automatic rally, then this is just basically a chop range area, the spring which goes below, and then you have the basically this is the area where the market makers or the whales show their hand in the direction where they want to push the market. At the moment, we're sort of in this area right now here, which is the last phase of the accumulation range. It can have one more pullback as well, which would be similar to this type of price action, which is called a backup action or last point of supply. And then we're looking for this to break out at the top of this range, and that would go into a markup phase, right? And so Bitcoin is very similar chart to this at the moment, right? So this is the total, all of crypto. If we look at just Bitcoin, right, very similar because it has such a huge amount, right? And so if Bitcoin breaks out of this level here, it's sort of exiting its accumulation range, and that could be a time where it sucks all of the liquidity into BTC. So we need to watch for the BTC dominance chart, which has just had quite a large rally through here, okay? So basically, this has been pretty much since the middle of 2021, so May 2021. So we've been almost 2 years in this range, right? 700 days. And we had from the bottom, Bitcoin sort of took off, sucked a lot of the liquidity, and things like Ethereum and the altcoins sort of lagged behind. So Bitcoin is still definitely sucking liquidity at the moment. We are at the range highs here. Usually I would wait for it to come up and hit this level here, but there is a little bit of a sneaky trend line in here that's sort of struggling at the moment. And ETH BTC, which is one of the really important ones to watch, is kind of leading the way at the moment. So we can see here that, through this phase here, and then we had chop sideways and then another leg down, right? Standard bear flag type action. Ethereum was losing ground to Bitcoin, and a lot of altcoins, had really nice runs, and we had the AI little phase, everything like that Alex was talking about at the start of the year. Nailed a whole heap of really nice calls on that one, and now Bitcoin sort of then had its next move and took back a whole heap of the liquidity. People were focusing on Bitcoin again. And now Ethereum is sort of like having a little bit of a bounce here. So we want to watch this to see if it can reclaim this range low through here, right? Really important if we can reclaim this range low through here. At the moment, it's rejecting, right? But if we can reclaim that and maybe push up to this level through here, get a bit of a consolidation, then you maybe even get some sort of a inverse head and shoulders type shape and a push up to this level of resistance here. That could open up, these two legs up, that could open up the ability for total 2 to break out, which is an important one to watch as well. All right, so the first total we were looking at, this is all cryptocurrency. Total 2 is all cryptocurrency minus Bitcoin, okay? So obviously Ethereum is the largest player in this basket. And so if Ethereum moves and breaks out, then this is most likely going to get a nice move up. Unfortunately, yesterday, we're coming to this very clear level of resistance, and this is, basically a major high time frame inverse head and shoulders shape as well. So it's a very strong accumulation type schematic, right? And we're looking for that to break to the upside. We've got a bit of a rejection here on the daily yesterday. Really nice move up in Ethereum, but it's sort of starting to lose a little bit of its momentum, right? So I'll show you a little trick here that you can use. This is the TD indicator on the higher time frames like the daily. It really helps you to pick bottoms and tops. And basically what it does is it counts the candles for you in a way. Basically, if you get a higher than the last 4 candles, it will give you a number and goes into a sequence, right? So it's called the TD sequential. Now, the rules of this are basically when you get a 9, it's a potential reversal. And you can see we've got the 9 down here, and we've got a reversal on that. I'll just quickly show you on the Bitcoin chart, because we had the 9 on the Bitcoin down here. So when you see that 9, it's sort of a warning that we could get a bit of a reversal here, right? And that could give us a swing to the upside. So that nailed it at the bottom on both Ethereum and BTC. And then when you break above the 9, it can basically is giving you a signal that it's getting ready to move back up again. So at the moment on Ethereum, we just got a 9 in on this daily here, which sort of is giving us an indication that, total 2 is struggling to break out here. And we put in a 9 on Ethereum. Maybe we have to have one more pullback. But what I'm going to be watching for on Ethereum is when we break out above this 9 here. So you can see on this one, I have all the numbers in. On the other one, only the 9s and 1s are showing. So the 1 is the direction of the new trend, right? So at the moment, if we've got the 9 in, when we get a candle close like this, above the 9, like that, usually that will lead to continuation of the trend, right? I'll give you a couple of quick examples of this on Bitcoin, then we can go back. So if we go and look at the last market cycle, right? Every time we get a close above the 9, right, we would start to shift in a new trend to push up again. So you get the 9, it triggers consolidation, get the close above, new trend starts, right? 9, close above, new trend higher, really strong push here, right? We get the 9, trends higher, fails after a decent push up. So part of it is you get, it counts to 13 sometimes. Anyway, we got pull back down, flips into support here, goes higher. Again here, consolidation once we hit the 9, then we push up once we get the close above the 9 wick, right? Same here, and then we push up, right? So you can go back and test this for yourself if you want to and have a look at how it works. So we have the 9, flips it to support and pushes. But a lot of the time what will happen is you can use these 9s and can give you a little bit of a bias strategy around that, right? So when we get the close above this 9 here, will probably coincide with this move and a breakout here of total 2. And that could be a really good signal for you guys to look to load up into some altcoins. And I would be looking to hold those until this gives a fake out, like something like this, right? If it's something like that happens, then okay, we probably got it wrong and the market's given a fake out. But if we do get a 9 close on Ethereum, it's probably going to trigger this to go on the next run and leg up. And then what we'll see is the rotation go from focusing on Bitcoin with our Bitcoin dominance into Ethereum and altcoins, and this might have a nice pullback and we get another alt rally leg. Yeah. Hopefully that wasn't too complicated.
No, that's all right. I think this is why another question was one guy who said he's still 100% on the sideline. So when to get in? So I think that at the moment, yeah, everything I still think is we're heading up in the sort of medium term. It's just a question of whether or not we have one more little pullback, as you say. But I think you just have to understand that if you haven't been accumulating in, the number of times over the past year where we've said this is just, ripe for accumulation of Bitcoin under 20 grand and ETH around the $1,000 mark. It's just I kind of wonder why you'd still 100% be on the sidelines. And I think it's because people still get that fear of, I still will get messages, or how can you say you're still bullish when all these banks are failing and stuff like that. A lot of that news kind of becomes irrelevant, or even bad news becomes good news, because we've been in a bear market for 2 years. And it'll do what it wants to do. So, any thoughts on that?
Yeah, for sure. So, the banks having issues in the US is extremely bullish for Bitcoin, right? I think that's the number one narrative for Bitcoin to go up right now and possibly forever, right? Is that if you're having banks going under, people want to have like what we said before, these developing nations, as soon as there's some sort of issue with the currency, everyone flocks to Bitcoin. So if we're having that happen in the richest country on the planet, the US, it can't be more bullish. The other thing as well is to remember that the Federal Reserve changed their policy. They, over the last almost pretty much since November, they came in November 2021, when we put the top in, they said we're going to do QT. And then they've basically done a full year of withdrawing capital from the economy. And then they pretty much reversed 3/4 of that in a weekend when the banks started failing, right? So what happened was, if we look at our ES chart, and I've been talking about this ever since it happened, because I was actually
Do you want
quite
to share
bearish
again,
around
mate?
this
Sorry,
period here.
I'll stop sharing if you want to share your charts again.
Pardon?
Do you want to share your screen again if you want to have
Oh,
a look
I'm
at
not
some
sharing my screen.
chart? No,
Sorry, I
I
didn't
just
realize.
got out of it while we were talking. Sorry.
Let me have a look. Window. Hang on. Entire screen. There we go. So basically, I was actually quite bearish, through this period here because we had a nice consolidation and broke down, and then the banks started failing, right? And what happened is we started coming in. So I'll just go out to a high time frame picture, okay? Ignore all this stuff around here. What we're looking at is this long-term trend line with multiple touches through here. This is basically like a broadening descending wedge. It's basically a continuation pattern, right, on the weekly, monthly time frame. But what for that signal basically to get cancelled would be for it to come back inside this trend line, right? And that would most likely lead to a capitulation. And this, if you go back and look at the previous bear markets, that's happened pretty much in 2008. It happened in 1999, 2000, right? We had big broadening descending wedge type structure. And then we got the fake out here, and then it came back inside and then collapsed into the final capitulation. So everybody was looking for that. And then right here, we actually had the trigger for that to happen with the banks to start to collapse. But then the Federal Reserve came out and they said, okay, we're going to backstop all the banks and pretty much bail out the depositors, not the shareholders or bondholders. They all got, screwed. But basically they did what took them 6 months to do in the global financial crisis in 2008. They did that in pretty much a weekend. And so that for me was when I flipped bullish, because instead of them taking 6 months of everything collapsing, they pretty much did it straight away.
Yeah.
And that stopped the bank runs and the fear and all that sort of stuff. And you can see, I'll just zoom in a little bit here on the chart because this is a really important point. You can see in here all these big wicks underneath the trend line, right? That was massive amounts of selling, fear. If you looked at all the headlines, everyone was basically shitting their pants, right? And basically, in my opinion, what happened was Wall Street flipped long here and started deploying massive amounts of capital. And that's why you see all this crazy choppy price action through here. And there's a few reasons you have to think about in markets as well, guys. When everybody is massively fearful, the world's all collapsing, you see all these crazy headlines in the news and stuff like that. A lot of the time, those are sponsored by big financial institutions to drive fear into retail so that they sell into their bags. And so, in my opinion, a lot of people were buying puts in here. They were going short. And if you go back and look at a few of my videos I posted in the group, I was saying that I think that what's going to happen is everybody's crazy short and trapped in here, and Wall Street is going to push it up because they want to lock people out of being in profit in their puts, and they want to hit the liquidation levels for the shorts as well, because then they can push the market up. They hit the liquidations, and look at this big rally that we had here last week. That's exactly what happened there. That's why this is just straight up, because it's just above this level, liquidations getting hit. Above this level, liquidations getting hit. All the shorts all through here, they're all being forced to close. And, we end up getting inverse head and shoulders shaped through there. The falling wedge played out. All of these are bullish structures one after the other, right? So we have to wait and see what happens now, because we had a really nice run, and we're coming back and testing support now. So in my opinion, it'll probably flag out a little bit and then try to push up higher up to this level here. And when that happens, that should give Bitcoin the door to finally break through its resistance as well. But we have to wait and see, because obviously something bad can happen and it can end up collapsing out of nowhere. We could still have some sort of a black swan event. So that is obviously the risk. But, in terms of most likely up.
Yeah, in terms of the fundamentals of everything you've just said there as well, I think I saw the argument the other day that, this is banks making depositors whole even though they're failing, with the Fed, the central bank stepping in. It's just confidence in the banking system. Why would people put their money in Bitcoin if they know that even in a worst case scenario they're going to get protected? But I think that's sort of the first order effect. I think the second order effect that the market is reacting to now and that people aren't thinking about in terms of crypto is that where'd that money come from? As you said, it was, 6 months, a year's worth of, we're going to unwind our balance sheet, and when, easy money's over, it's never going to happen again. Within a weekend, 3/4 of it got printed again. And so, yeah, we might have 100, 200 regional banks fail. Oh no, all depositors are protected, banks are still safe, but they've got to print that money out of thin air for all these bad investments on bonds and things that people didn't hedge the interest rate and all that kind of thing. And so now it sends the message to the financial system is, even though you didn't get bailed out kind of 2008 style, that all this risk taking and gambling, whatever, we're going to protect your depositors no matter what, even if your structure of your bonds and portfolio and stuff wasn't good or wasn't hedged. So now they know that they don't have to hedge, or they can speculate even more and they can make all that money. And if things go bad, they're kind of still going to get indirectly bailed out or not get slapped on the wrist in that same manner. So I think that's the way to think about it. And again, like we saw in COVID, 5 trillion gets printed in 12, 24 months or whatever. So yeah, you can say we protected deposit holders, but if there's X 10 trillion, 20 trillion out there that they need to fix up, it's just going to dilute the US dollar again so badly, or then Europe will have to do this, or Australia might have to step into this to their banks. So yeah, no one's going to lose their deposits. They're not going to let banks fail, but it's the same thing again. It's just this constant dilution, and money printing is always the answer versus Bitcoin and crypto that's more scarce relatively. The only other thing I'd add to that was we still get questions about the US dollar pegged stable coins in terms of how do they lose their value. They're always going to be pegged 1-to-1 with $1 US, those central ones. So it doesn't really matter how much money is printed. I think people sometimes lose that concept as well. But anything you want to add to all of that?
No, I mean, I think you nailed it, to be honest. And to go back to the original question that the guy had was, what he's sitting on the sidelines still, what should he do? I think it's important to just have a look. I'm still sharing screen, right?
Sorry, I got out of again while I just had a rant.
Hang on. Let's go back. It doesn't notify me if I'm not sharing my screen.
My bad. There you go.
That's fine. Is it sharing? Okay.
Yeah.
Right. So what I was talking about before, right? Wyckoff professionals, traders would say that this is your preliminary support, right? Which is basically the level that separates you from being in accumulation and not being in accumulation, right? So when we break above this level, we could be going into markup, which could realistically fill in pretty quickly up to 38K, right? So if you're sitting on the sidelines, and let me just get up my indicator again that I had up before, the TD sequential. Right, so we've got our 9 put in here. Right, we see we've got the wick from this level across here like this. Right, that is I'll make a different color. That is our resistance level. You can see that we can't get a close above that. There's also a yearly open level through here as well. It's important. Which is this one here from to 2021, 2020 close, right? But, you guys can just have a look at this 9 level through here. If we get a strong close above that, and I didn't have any exposure, like I would want to have some sort of exposure if we get a strong close above that, because that could lead, something like this, that could lead us into the next stage of the uptrend. Just, you can go back and back test this yourselves. Don't believe me just because I've shown it to you on the screen, but go back and have a look at it yourself and test it. It's very easy to do. And have a look. Every time we got a strong close like this above the 9, pretty much every single time, it ended up resulting in the next leg up, right? So you can either be a breakout trader by buying the breakout when we get a strong close above the 9, or, potentially this ends up rejecting from here at the moment, which kind of looks like possibly is. We could get a sweep below this level here, right? With this gray box here is a 4-hour order block, right? And these wicks through here, if these get swept, that means that there's a whole heap of panic selling coming into the market, okay? So break down here and close back above inside this range like this. That would be an entry trigger for me, because most likely you lose a level, then reclaim it. It means that the bears were too weak to hold it down, okay? Because you lose a level, should stay below that level. The next area I think is a really great entry point is the top of the range. Like, look, okay, from back here, right? These range highs that got put in at 24.5 in August last year. I think that's a really nice level. Combining with this level here, then we have our daily order block through here. This guy right here, that basically means that there's going to be a whole heap of support here and be willing buyers at this level. If we do have a sell-off and come back down, there's a decent chance that we get a reversal off that level, right? Some people in my trading community actually looking for a lower level at 22,400. I'm not too sure if we're going to get that, but that would involve, a bit more of a flash crash type environment, come back down. There is a bit of a CME gap through here as well, right? So yeah, basically have a look at potentially that gap getting filled, because that could be an entry as well. The other thing also to think about is Bob Lucas's 60-day cycles, right? And there is a possibility that we end up doing something like this. So this was the start of the new cycle, and we started having right translated cycles. So the 30-day is the midpoint. The 53 days obviously to the right of the 30 days. So it means we're more likely to be in an uptrend, right? So that just switched. So potentially, we're at the moment, we're at 27 days, right? So if we topped here, it would mean that we actually topped on day 20, which I think is unlikely. We'd have our first right translated cycle, then go into left translated cycle straight away. So there is potential that, we have our next leg up, top on around day 43, and then we have the pullback for the cycle low. I don't know if this is coming all the way back down to here, but potentially it could. It could also have a shallower pullback and do something like this and then go again. But generally, Bitcoin's lows happen around 60 days from the previous lows, give or take 10 days. So if you want to learn more about that, go check out Bob Lucas on YouTube and Twitter. He's really great.
I guess I might share my screen just quickly with my cycles as well.
Yep.
If I can get up, if BLX has got them there for me. But I think just in general terms, so this has been a few weeks or months since I did my last video with all this on there, but we've certainly bottomed right on around the right time, particularly for that alts and that total chart as well. They've really obeying these cycles nicely, but
yeah, you did nail the bottom. I remember we were talking about it, and I was like, oh, I don't know.
The only thing I think that could really change the whole big picture cycle for stocks and crypto and everything is if we get a second entire hiking cycle. So let's say that inflation starts to not come down but actually creep higher again, and they go, oh god, we've got to go from, New Zealand are at 5.2 now. If they've got to go 5, 6, 7, 8, I think that's the only thing that could take Bitcoin to new lows and have a complete stock market meltdown. Other than that, I think that even if things get bad, and I do think we're probably going to have a recession and banks are going to fail and business are going to fail, I still think that we can probably, number can keep going up for Bitcoin and stocks and that, because of that money printing they're going to have to step in to save so many things. But the other thing we've spoken about the other day is if we get there really quickly, so if we have a run to and go parabolic very early, that would be the other thing that worries me. If it starts to look like we've gone completely parabolic and then we start to get worries that inflation is going to be higher for longer, at that point we might not even make a new high, or we could go straight to 100k in the left-hand side of this cycle and then have a 2.5, 3 year bear market. So that's one thing that I'm just being conscious of, depending on what the macro environment is, and obviously we'll have to keep our eye on that at the time. But any thoughts on that?
Yeah, for sure. I'll grab the screen. I just want to show everyone one thing quickly to expand on that. So this is the basically inflation data and all the CPIs that came out over the last 23 years, okay? So at the moment, so just first of all, to preface this, they actually changed it so that they're only comparing data versus the last year, whereas it used to be the last 2 years. So we have the 12th of April, which is in basically a week, right? Usually it would have been 8.5 plus 2.6. That would be the average of those two that they would compare the data against, how much we've increased in the basket of goods for CPI, right? So now they're actually made it so they're only comparing against the 8.5. So all of last year when we had these really high reads, we were comparing against quite low inflation rates. So like 1.4, 1.7, 2.6, and we were getting 7.5s, blah, blah, blah. Right. One of the things that helped me pick the bottom on the stock market was I was saying here that, in my opinion, inflation is going to start to come down once we start comparing against the numbers above 6, right? And so, this was a few months out when I started talking about this. We're comparing against, the fives and in the mid fives area for quite a while. And then we jump from 6.2 to 6.8 quite rapidly. And that was when we started really having inflation come down, and the bottom got put in on the CPI date of October in 2022, right? That was literally the bottom of the market. And that was when we started comparing to the high CPI numbers, right? So for me, it kind of makes sense that now we're comparing against some really high CPI numbers, right? 8.5, 8.3, 8.6, 9.1, right? The next few months, next 4 months, we should have a pretty easy time getting these numbers down. So, 6.5, then we had 6.4, was a little bit of a worry, but now we had 6% in Feb. Now we're comparing it's 8.5 for April, right?
Yeah.
So for the March numbers. So when we're doing April, we're going to be comparing about 8.3, 8.6, and 8.9. I feel like that is sort of setting us up for a little bit of an easier run to get the inflation numbers to come out lower over the next 4 months.
I agree completely. That's really, really good chart to look at, all laid out like that. And we could see the stock market making new all-time highs when we get a read that's like a 3 or a 4 when it's compared to that 9% from last year, and people go, we're nearly back to the range now. They're going to start cutting and whatever. So that's if it was to make a little prediction, if it keeps playing out this way, then yeah, stock market and Bitcoin could be really doing well in the next 3 months, 4 months.
Definitely. I think people will get excited when inflation starts to come down, as long as, if we start getting like in the mid 4s, which I think is definitely possible by the June, July reads, right? I think, people could start getting really excited. The only caveat is inflation needs to come down and unemployment needs to stay low. It's okay at the moment because unemployment is quite low, so we don't really have to worry about it too much. But it just creeped up from 3.4 to 3.6 in the last reading. So we need to make sure that's not the start of a big parabolic move and if unemployment just starts to launch.
Yeah.
I don't think it will. We'll have to wait and monitor that. But that is the downside risk, right?
Cool.
So,
well, mate, we're creeping up on an hour, so I wanted to maybe wrap it up and just share some other stuff that we've been going over together and working on and whatnot. Sure. So I think another question we had was about the projects, and I know it's been a little bit scattered, and I think 1 month, I think we've covered about 40 odd different projects and hidden gems in the first year since we started the premium community again. But I know Facebook's a bit scattered and it's all over the place, and some people are missing them, and it's not the structured research reports that people like. Some month there's more happening than others and whatever. So I guess we can share with people that we are working on a login portal and an app like we used to have under the old Nuggets news banner before it became Collective Shift and we went our own ways. But if we have that sort of login portal, research reports, portfolio, I think that's the kind of stuff that people want. Have a TA tab for Kyle with his TA updates, and we're assembling a little team behind the scenes. I think there's 5 or 6 of us now, contributors and other people that are reaching out, wanting to help out. And I think there's a lot of people in the group that are pretty experienced now that are working in crypto projects and stuff. So I'd love to see, as we get into the bull market, people starting to post their own stuff, and that helps us find more hidden gems to either do reports on or do TA on, as Kyle's working with us now. So that was all pretty exciting, and I'm not sure the exact time frame on that, but definitely aware that it's not up to that standard that I want to get it to. I'm not up to the standard that I want to get out my research output to either, but it's all things that we're aware of and hoping to fix. But anything you want to add to that, Kyle?
No, man, I'm excited for everything that you've been working on recently, and I think the group is going to be really impressed with everything, especially as the market warms up as well. Like, there hasn't really been much happening the last couple of weeks anyway, but I think, for the rest of this cycle. And then by the time the bull run comes around, you'll be firing on all cylinders again, mate. And the community's behind you. Everyone supports you and wants to see you get back to your best. So
awesome.
keep at it.
Well, appreciate your support as well, mate. And hope everyone's enjoying Kyle's post in the group. I hope you guys have enjoyed that. We'll probably end up sharing that on YouTube as well. But for now, that was just going through all the questions that members had. So I hope you guys have found that helpful. We might try and do this once a month or whatnot. So yeah, cheers, mate. Thanks for joining us.
Too easy, guys. Chat soon. Bye.
Thanks, guys.